Welcome, Arun, to Newslaundry. For those of you living under a rock, Arun Shourie is a scholar, author, former editor, and former minister, and something which this generation possibly doesn't know. You were, I think, the first to do this kind of investigative journalism, almost sting journalism, in your time. And I think this generation doesn't know that side of you at all. This is Arun's 27th book, which gives you some idea of how he works and lives. This one is Two Saints. It's about it's an investigation of these two saints, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa and Ramana Maharishi. Arun, it was only halfway through your book, well, 100 pages into your book, that I understood what you were doing. In some way, it is an extension of your last book. I think the inquiry started then into the scriptures as a book. The mind, as you've written, is a strange and very powerful organ. It plays with us, or we play with it. In one way, it's a very aggressive book, but it's done so cleverly that it's almost devious. Science doesn't answer all the questions, but in your search for answers, you've examined spiritual answers. Their words, you've examined the saints' actions, their words, and refuted them with scientific facts, their behavior with scientific facts. So science raises questions that give answers to what appear as miracles and divine visions. You've written, as an aside, when we say ever so glibly, science does not answer all questions, we should remember neither does religion, nor indeed spiritual discourse. Now, how did you come to this connection of this parallel investigation into the spiritual behavior of these masters and your research with scientific facts? How did you think of combining the two? Did you, when you read about their divine visions and their fainting and passing out and all the deprivation that they went through, did that trigger off that why is this happening?
Actually, Madhu, there are 2 points. One is, there was a very, very famous book, probably the most famous in this line, by William James. He was a philosopher, psychologist, a very great thinker towards the close of the 19th century and the early 20th century. In 1902, he gave a set of lectures called the Gifford Lectures. And they became a book called The Varieties of Religious Experience. It is sort of the classic in this field. At that time, everybody was attacking, it was the day of science, and everybody was was dismissing mystical experiences. So he collected accounts of the mystics that were known around that time in the West and said, no, these are very important experiences and we should examine them scientifically.
Which is what you've done.
But at that time he needed to convince those persons in the audience and in Western academia that to take mystic experiences seriously. In our case, it is the opposite. We assume everything to be a mystic's experience. So I tried in this book to separate the peak mystic experience, for which today even the neuroscientists would say that it is too premature for us to say anything definite, and the peripheral experiences that they had, visions. And Sri Ramakrishna would say, for instance, would have visions of many gods and goddesses, and the characteristic feature was that whichever deity he got interested in at that time, from Hanuman to Radha to, of course, the mother was always with him, Durga, or Jesus, or the prophet.
Even Islam, he experimented with...
Yeah, for 3 days. In 3 days, he would get that vision. Then this out-of-body experiences, the followers of Sri Ravi Maharishi say that they called them two near-death experiences, but actually medically he was not near death at all in either instance. So for these peripheral experiences, I thought that I pursued two lines of inquiry. One was to see in what other circumstances do the same experiences occur. Then maybe there is the same neurological basis for the experience. And the second was that as in brain surgery, we'll be taught by surgeons, let's say I have epilepsy and it spreads all over and I have convulsive movements and it is intractable in that it is not responding to drugs. Therefore, they'll have to do some surgery. Now, they first try to locate where is the focus of this from which it originates.
And the patient is awake while they
Yes. So then they open the skull and then they try to stimulate different points in the brain with an electrode. And the person reports what's happening. And there was a very famous surgeon called Penfield in Montreal. And he did this for almost 1,300 surgeries. When he was asking questions, the stenographer will keep taking down what the patient is saying. And many of those experiences were just like the peripheral experiences of our mystics. That he thinks he's now in South Africa, he's talking to his friend, and it seems a completely real experience to him. So
with Penfield, you've written that is why one of the far-reaching implications of Penfield's experiments was the premise that almost every emotion, affection, aversion, fear, longing, even pain, and memories, pleasant and unpleasant, could all be triggered artificially. The subject could be made to experience pain without actually hurting his body. The subject could be made to feel elated or depressed without anything actually having happened to her or around her. The subject could be made to remember something that happened to her long ago without her making any effort at all. Which means that whatever we feel is not organic. Every emotion we actually do to ourselves.
No, there are 2 points. One is that actually speaking, all experience is going to come to us through the brain. That's where we experience things. And the question is, in this book, as to whether the trigger is something special to the mystics, or it can be to anybody else. Like music, Sri Ramakrishna, the baul singers would be singing something and he will go into a trance. Now, is there some special degree of attainment which has made him so sensitive to that? Or is it, there's a thing called musicogenic epilepsy, in which any note or a particular tune can trigger epilepsy. Is it similar to that? So that is the question.
So what is remarkable in your book is that you have given the highest respects to their teachings.
Yes.
To what they say, what they teach, in terms of attaining some evolution in your spiritual life. And you've given and you accord them all the respect for their teachings. However, their visions and all the other actions that they do also show that it was basically what mountaineers go through, yes, what anyone with sleep deprivation, food deprivation.
Which these pilots go through in...
Exactly. So you've proven that. So you, in some way, have exposed these saints as having put themselves in a position where they're not understanding what they're actually doing to themselves.
Yes and no. First is, it is not only their teachings, but their lives, their purity, the solace that being in their presence gave to millions, their great influence on the course of our country. So for all these things, they deserve our reverence. The question is that many of the other experiences were actually very this-worldly experiences. And they were neither the result of great spiritual attainment, they are separate from that, nor do they seem to be, what many thought, to be sort of windows to another dimension of reality. See, supposing we are devotees of Sri Ramakrishna, and he says that he sees the mother emerge from the Ganges and walk towards him and tell him something, or Sita, or somebody like this. Now, we would think that maybe he has a sixth sense or a third eye, and he is seeing what we can't see. No doubt that he is, in many times, sensitive to things which escape us. But maybe there is another explanation for that particular vision. That's the point. So it does not expose them in a sense. It separates the true mystic experience from other experiences. And I feel that even that's the central theme of the book. But even person who's probably one of the foremost commentators today, my friend Pratap Bhanu Mehta, missed this point in his review, because he thinks that I'm clubbing all experiences and regarding them as the mystic experience.
No. So, but as you've written in the book, that Christians have visions of their background, of what their environment is, what their culture is, what their education, what they've grown up with. Say,
Mary.
We will not, somebody from India, a guru from India, a saint from India, will not visualize a white person with a long beard in white robes. We will visualize Durga or, whoever we have grown up with. So then it clearly disproves the fact that there's a divine grace that visits them. Is basically their own projection.
Yes, it seems to be that way. Not only that, you can see even among our own persons, let's say the devotees of Sri Ramana will have visions of Sri Ramana,
exactly,
not of Ramakrishna. And the devotees today of Ramakrishna would not have visions of Raman. So that itself shows that our minds are conditioned in some way by the bhajans I may be singing, by the contemplation that I may be doing, and so on.
I remember your first question to the Dalai Lama. I think you had come to one of his teachings for the first time, and you asked him about the suffering of a child. Why does it happen? He did not know you at that time, I think, or your personal history. But I do remember that his answer was so generic that it created a lot of discomfort around people who knew you. It was such an inadequate answer from him about your Adit's, your son's sufferings. He said were because of his previous lives. And in your book, you do in 2 lines scoff at this issue of previous lives being brought upon our lives today and that kind of suffering. But you didn't give up on the Dalai Lama. You continued a dialogue with him. How did that evolve?
No, I don't remember his response at that time. But at this book release function, he was again asked that.
By Shantum Seth.
By Shantum Seth.
About reincarnation.
And he was giving, Shantum wanted to follow it up with another question, saying, no, this is not it. But I told him not to, because the Dalai Lama was saying the standard answer. See, there is no doubt that what we do, let's say, which is karma, and that includes our thoughts, our speech, and whatever physical things we do, that has an effect. It sort of etches a line in our mind. It reinforces some connections between neurons, it weakens other connections, and so on. But previous life, to take that beyond, merely the etchings on the mind, and therefore predisposing me to a particular type of action, and therefore inviting the consequences. To extend that to previous lives and so on is just an assumption. It is.
It's not scientific.
It is what an author has called convenient fiction. And that's the theme of the book in the previous book. So here I've just, as I said, probably mentioned it.
But he does say, as you've mentioned, the Dalai Lama, it may be that science will learn from an engagement with spirituality,
yes,
especially in its interface with wider human issues from ethics to society. But certainly some specific aspects of Buddhist thought, such as its old cosmological theories and its rudimentary physics, will have to be modified in the light of new scientific insights. So there really is no scientific proof of previous lives,
but of course,
or even of reincarnation,
of course,
which Hindus also believe in.
Yes, but and there are others who have said that there is scientific proof by examining individual cases. You know, of a child.
Anecdotal, yes.
And they say that, oh, he remembers his previous birth. So there's a man who's written a book called, I think, 20 Cases of Reincarnation and so on, in which they try to examine them in great detail. And the Dalai Lama, for some time, I think, also, if he heard of such an instance, let's say a small girl in Punjab, he will send a group to investigate that. But that is referred to in one book by a man called Sogyal Rinpoche, the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. But it is not then elaborated, and I tried to find out whether such cases had been studied and documented by the Dalai Lama's team, as Sogyal Rinpoche had implied. I was told that that's not the case. That was one case which he had examined, and it turned out that the girl was completely, she really was able to talk about her parents and brother and sister and so on. And the Dalai Lama brought the two families together and said, here is your previous mother, this is it. You have two mothers. That is a very nice thing to do. But I don't see any evidence in that sense. It is of course central even to the institution of the Dalai Lama.
Yes. You've mentioned earlier in the book about Gandhiji's statements about the Jews, that they brought it upon themselves by their previous lives.
Yes.
He also made a statement which you haven't mentioned here, but he also made a statement about when people were dying in the famine.
And the earthquake.
And the earthquake, yes. And they died in the earthquake, and he said it's because of their past sins.
And no, it is the present sin of untouchability.
Huh.
He said it's untouchability, and that's why he was in the south. And the earthquake took place in Bihar, and about 30,000 people died. It was at that time cataclysmic. So when he comes to Bihar, he was in the south campaigning against untouchability. So he said, this has been visited upon you because of the sin of untouchability. And the young students asked him, how do you say that in Bihar we don't have that much untouchability? You were in the south, there they have it. Why did the earthquake not occur there? And what about the Quetta earthquake? There was no untouchability there. And equal number of people had died. And at one point...
and his answer was?
And he said, you should not ask questions which on subjects which you don't understand.
Which I don't have answers to.
No. So that is dealt with in some detail in the previous book.
But it seems to be completely devoid of compassion.
Well, you see, because compassion all resides with God. In the sense, for a person who believes in God, they cannot, and who believes that God is all powerful and all knowing and compassionate, then if anything happens to me, it cannot but be my fault against the will of God. So the victim always gets blamed. That is how I had argued in the previous book that a believer in God necessarily lands himself in these quandaries. Earthquake has come. It is not a leaf moves but by His will. All people believe in God, believe in that. Then the earthquake is also because of His will. Then why would He kill 30,000 persons? Well, must be because of something they have done. But they did nothing just now, so it must be previous life. The same thing, and to an embarrassing extent in the case of the Jews. Very big people like Martin Buber and the other people, and they were very great philosophers and so on. They wrote to Gandhiji that we have been following your activities from 1908, always asking ourselves whether the methods that you are advocating would be the ones we should adopt. And but now we are being persecuted like this in Europe and in Germany. So how and why and what should we do? And actually speaking, if you see, he's blaming them.
And he tells them to go into the gas chambers
with a smile on their face.
With a smile on his face, on their faces.
Almost like, it's almost as and he said, because you don't have love for Hitler in your heart. So it becomes very difficult. But what else could he have? I mean, it was a genuine belief of his. Because he believes, from his point of view, everything happening to them is happening by the will of God. So these things are, this is why I don't believe in this concept of the God being all powerful, all compassionate and all knowing, and still allowing all this to happen.
Sitting with a register punishing people for their past lives.
No, but even that is inexplicable. Why does he sit with the register? Why does he not prevent me from doing the things for which he will then punish me? They say, oh, he wants to give you free will. Well, some authors will ask, why did he give free will to Hitler to kill 6 million Jews? After all, being all-knowing, he would have known what giving free will to Hitler will be used for. So
it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense at all.
Why do you think there's so much aggression in devotion and in devotees? There are such strong reactions to questioning and inquiry. Even when you went to see someone to get get your answers, while waiting for him, the gentleman over there told you that you are profaning a divine experience.
Yes.
Now, Hinduism itself in scriptures is questioning, is about debate, never gives you conclusions, actually leaves you with the free will to interpret it any way you like, which is why in any given religious ceremony there are so many arguments, because everybody wants to do it his or her own way. What is it what do you think is this kind of aggressive stance of protecting things which you know are factually or scientifically difficult to prove?
Yes, I think it is a great nervousness. We don't want to open up our gods, goddesses, or the concepts of gods and goddesses and our scriptures to examination because of a deep nervousness that if they are opened up for examination, then all sorts of things will come out. And when persons like Dr. Ambedkar, in his book called Riddles in Hinduism, when he points to these inconsistencies, I mean, the caste Hindus got outraged. But those were the very Dharma Shastras and others which we regard as divinely inspired. So, and this is all the more so when with these modern gurus and so on. Ramakrishna Paramahamsa is always being asked questions. He does not mind the question. He will give his answer. Ramana Maharishi was answering questions. But today, with this defensive aggressiveness, and that is why I have contrasted it with the open-mindedness and therefore the confidence of the Dalai Lama.
He takes any question.
Any question, and in fact he says that you should keep a waste paper basket near you. Yeah, I remember in Ashoka Hotel there was he was giving a set of discourses on a meditation text. So the one monk will read out the passage
and he
will then give an answer. So some passage came about, how universe is created, this, that, and the other. He said, "Oh, these Buddhist cosmological theories, such an embarrassment." I mean, no other person will say that. And again, in that book release function, he said, "Yes, we must revise our ideas about cosmology." That shows confidence. And he has helped. One of his friends called Varela, a scientist, set up I think it's the Mind and Life Institute.
Mm-hmm. He used to have this conference every year.
Every year. He still has that conference every year. It used to be with the great Tibetan meditation masters and the neuroscientists. He brought them together. And that resulted in a whole corpus of literature.
And investigation experiments with biofeedback.
Yes.
They did amazing things.
Yes, and they've also found which part of the brain, gets the grey matter increases in density. That means the connections between neurons become more.
And the changes that take place during meditation.
Yes.
And when you reach a different state,
yes,
they tried it on different monks who were...
In 6 weeks, they found that a particular part of the brain, the grey matter, increases in that. So that shows openness and a confidence that in the end, the insights of our ancient seers will be vindicated. And if they are not vindicated, no problem, there'll be new insights. So that is, I think, the attitude we should have.
You've written about visions, trance, samadhi, and you document all that. You document that it could come from sleep deprivation, food deprivation, and in today's time, it is explained by medical science. Oliver Sacks, amazing man, tells us it's a prisoner's theater, you've written. And Freud called it the auto-hypnotic state. So in that sense, you've explained how these so-called visions happened scientifically. But it doesn't happen today. I haven't heard of these New Age gurus claiming to have had these kind of visions.
I don't know. I don't know much about these New Age gurus, because they have absolutely nothing to do with spirituality, in my view. They have absolutely nothing to do with the tradition of Ramakrishna Paramahamsa or Ramana Maharishi and so on.
You've written, with sensory deprivation, psychologists point out our minds become hypervigilant to any cue from the surroundings, as well as to the least flicker within the mind itself.
Yes.
Isolation and danger compound the effect. The hypervigilant system within the brain becomes even more at edge, especially so to any cue that may either aid our survival or be a reason to hope, such as with the mountaineers, who they find there's a third man who's with them, helping them along. But doesn't that give kind of a false hope? It is false.
Yes, but at that time it may be very helpful in survival. And for instance, in this third man business, the general consensus would be that it is my accumulated experience of the past, which I now embody in somebody, and he then steers me along. But that's a very important device at that moment. For
the mind survival technique kind of kicks in to create this kind of thing to help you get over, to survive, basically.
Survive, yes.
A couple of years ago, there was a police officer who decided to become Radha. I don't know if you saw
I remember.
And he dressed in women's clothes and he was devoting his life to Krishna, and he was considered a nutter and crazy. Now, the saints that you've written about did similar things.
In the case of not Ramana Maharishi, but Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa certainly, actually, see, it was a result.
He also put on women's clothes.
But it was, I'll tell you why. In his case, one of the most distinctive features is total immersion. That is a thing that we are taught in meditation, that you must immerse yourself in that. For instance, if it is in emptiness, if it is in the breath, or if it is in some visualization.
Or mantra.
A mantra, or you just immerse. Or Sri Ramakrishna had this skill that he could immerse himself totally in anything that he was thinking of at that time. And this case of Radha, or he says now, he wants a vision of Krishna. Then he realizes that 3 दिन हो गए, I'm not getting that vision. So the thought comes to him that I can only get it by being Radha. I want to see Krishna as Radha saw him. So he starts now sort of meditation on Radha. And at that time, he becomes, it's not just sitting and thinking about Radha, but he puts on women's clothes, he puts on jewelry, his gait changes. And actually, it was not, he must have been clean shaven at that time, because in a gathering, there's an eyewitness account, in a gathering, kirtan ho raha hai. Women are on one side, men are on one side, and it is the household of a person who was the overseer of the temple, where he is a priest. So that person knows him very well and is a very close devotee. So he asks his wife, okay, who was that lady standing next to you when the prayers are over? And he thinks maybe it is the wife of some other person whom I have not met, some new person has come. So the wife tells him, you don't know? He is the master. So, what do you call, perfect would Sri Ramakrishna become. Now, either you say this account is false, then do not attribute the divine sort of aura to it, or you say that it is a condition both of the devotee and of the person who's totally immersed himself. And it is that which results in my seeing him as a woman, and of his stepping, of his becoming Radha to see Krishna in that form. So it would be, the explanation would be a total immersion, which is almost a condition of meditative success, rather than thinking that no, actually Radha came to him. So that is the distinction.
There was this godman who was giving out gold watches. We caught it on camera. What is this? How do people get fooled?
No, it is our despair. And that is why I have not taken up cases of individual godmen of today and so on. But it is our despair which leads us to believe. We want to latch on to anything. I myself visited Sai Baba in that particular instance that you are quoting, and we used to go to a Guruji here who, because of Chhatarpur, because of Anita's condition, and actually I've described that. There's a chapter there called Sangat and Sensibility and Suggestivity.
Yes.
And in that, it is actually my own experience. Why did we believe? And how the sort of how it would have an effect and not have an effect.
But he had, I think, he called us 2-3 times, and we have this Arya Samaji thinking, jab bulate hai koi, from that you don't say no. So we went, and then he had 2 things which I found, techniques, which connected with people. One, as you know, he would make you sit and eat from the same thali with strangers, which crosses all Indian sensibility of jhoota nahi khana. So you're eating together, so it sort of equalizes you. The second time he called me alone again, so I went, and he said, ek lota lana, and he blessed the lota. He said, roz nahane, jab naha lete ho, to last wala bhar ke apne sir par dalna. So I did it a couple of days, and I realized what it does. What it does is exactly what you talk about, is that you feel blessed, you feel somebody is there with you, because all individuals, all human beings at the end of it are alone and feel alone. But when somebody gives you this feeling that he's there for you, it gives you a positive aura around yourself. So he caught that.
Well, that's a very important function that the Guru performs, or these godmen perform, that they, in a sense, are psychiatrists. they've made a stock of the thing. You know, what is happening there is actually explicable, what do you call, comprehensible in terms of ordinary psychology and our despair. वो कहते नहीं भाई जो तुम्हें तकलीफ है वो तुम मुझे दे दो.
Which is also when in your book, when he's dying of cancer, it's explained that he took everybody's illnesses.
Yes, he himself says that because they used to touch me, therefore
so
I took on their ill karma. Now, in that sense, Bobby, they believe, in any case, these modern people, they are psychologists to this extent, or psychiatrists, in that they give us these reasons almost for feeling better at that time. You have put it very well. You know, we feel we are helped, we are blessed. उन्होंने कल मुझे रात को रोटी दी, अपनी थाली से खाना खिलाया. Therefore, it's then my mind which is working in such a way as to affect my body.
Mm-hmm. But then when I did it, and I finally said, I'm not going to do this because I'm not going to be having this fake blessing just to feel. I'd rather feel the rawness of life than walk around. And another incident, we were invited, some journalists were invited to meet Sri Ravi Shankar, and I'm always curious. So as we went in, they said, you've got to ask questions. So I'm thinking, what do I ask him, what do I ask him? And then finally I asked him, do you believe in spirits coming back after they've left their body? So he looked at me and he says, hey, what do you think? So I said, I don't know, that's why I'm asking you. So when I left, his followers said, you see what he told you? He said, you must think about this. And I didn't see it as that. I saw it as somebody who just, didn't know how to give an answer and so just was palming it off. But the weight the followers were giving to his answer.
Wonderful. That's a wonderful example, because you see, then we are reading something into the answer. And very often, these people will talk, not these two saints, they are completely forthright and honest. But the other fellows, they give some ambiguous answer. It's like the oracle at Delphi.
Yes.
It was just a sound, and anybody could read anything out of that sound. So many of these answers are just it's phrases which you can interpret in any way you like.
If questions are raised about any guru, even those who are arrested, even those who have been in financial trouble, even those who have created environmental damage, if any kind of questions are raised, our culture today has become so virulent that if you even raise a question, there is a massive amount of abuse and aggression. And I would include this also with Modi's followers, Narendra Modi's followers, that if you would ask a normal journalistic question, that if there have been surgical strikes, can we please see evidence of it, or some given official statement, that is considered sacrilege, it's considered blasphemy. So now we are transferring the kind of idol worship that we did or we do with gurus and godmen to even politicians.
Yes, perfect. And there's a very good example, a very good phrase that was used by a Hindi journalist, Hari Shankar Vyas. He writes beautifully. He's written after this function of the Dalai Lama releasing this book, he wrote the thing, Arun Shourie ka arth. In which he says कि ये जो सोशल मीडिया के हिंदू लंगूर जो हैं कि उन्होंने पिछले 3 साल में अरुण शौरी के बारे में क्या क्या नहीं कहा, और वो देखते नहीं वगैरह, पढ़ते नहीं. But that's quite the right phrase. These chaps are just an army of abusers, and I'm sure it is not a very large army.
It's a large army.
No. So, Madhu, I think there's a deceit in that also, because you have software in which one message gets replicated into 10,000 messages.
Bots that come.
And with slight alterations. So it seems as if 10,000 people are attacking Madhu, and it may be just one fellow who has used an abusive term. And then they are saying, like Trump, no, I am not saying it. Many people are saying it. That's Trump's standard answer. And you are dishonest. He said, no, I'm not saying it. So many people are saying it. But he has created that army. So I feel that, yes, from the media point of view, and from the point of view of national discourse, this is a very bad turn, a very dangerous turn, and everybody should be alert to this. You'll just see Arun Shourie supports diesel price hike. I don't know actually, frankly speaking, whether price has gone up or down of diesel. But some damn fool has put it out. I have protested to Twitter. They don't care. I've sent them a legal notice that these accounts are there in my name, and they use such filthy and abusive language. I don't know, and I get reprimanded by my friends कि यार तुम क्या हो गया ऐसी शब्द तुम use कर रहे हो?
No, but the Twitter, when you complain to Twitter, it goes into another software where it just finds if there are particular words or not, and usually your complaint is just rejected. That it fits in with our social policy.
Absolutely. So this perversion of discourse and now the skillful use of it by godmen as well as political godmen, equally fake and equally dangerous.
Going into your discussion about Baba Calvary's experiments on
haunted houses, is it?
Haunted houses, as well as on people with angina who were given placebo, and people who were, they were told that they were going to get surgery done, and actually in reality nothing was done. And compared to the people who actually got surgery, who had heart problems, angina, they did equally well. Now, this would make surgeons, such as my husband, extremely nervous. And I give you two anecdotal experiences. First, let me ask you the question. What is the difference between a placebo and a guru's blessing? Because if a placebo can make a patient better, as we have seen that it does happen, and a guru's blessing, what is the difference?
No difference. And actually, that is why the guru's blessing may have actually a great, we must not just always scoff at it, because he is doing the work of a therapist, of a placebo. He is triggering in our mind those reactions which will help heal me of that particular problem. So I'm not therefore dismissing that thing. But maybe all blessings are of placebos. So don't think that there is a real power in the guru. The real power may be in you.
Yes.
In your, not that he has power, but in my belief that he has that power, which cures me. That's the difference.
Now, two anecdotal experiences that we've had with friends. There's a friend of ours who had cancer, and he was being treated with chemotherapy. And he went to one of these new age gurus. And Naresh, my husband's cardiac surgeon, it does not discourage any other holistic healing of any kind. He believes that if Reiki is helping you, do Reiki. If you go into Guru, it's fine. He never discourages it. But this Guru told our friend that you have no cancer, you're clean. Stop all chemotherapy. The man stopped getting the therapy. He thought he was clean. He believed he was healed. And he came back to Delhi. He had gone to Goa. He came back to Delhi. And when Naresh saw him, he said, you really need to get chemotherapy done. And there was a British doctor visiting who's an expert on that particular cancer that this man had. And he went to see him and he said, it's too late now. He was in the hospital then. It's too late now. He could have been cured. There was no reason. If he had not stopped the chemo, he could have been cured. Another friend of mine with the same guru, she was in school with me. She went to this same guru who told her again, you're clean, you have no cancer. So she got no treatment at all and she died.
So that is very important. Therefore, we should, I have tried to emphasize a lot in this, that please, this is not an argument for not taking the regular medical treatments at all. these are just examples. For instance, in brain surgery, where these wires are put to stimulate a particular part of the brain so as to it will generate more, produce more dopamine, for instance, for Parkinson's patients. And then, or stem cells are put in there, and half the patients are told that yes, stem cells have been put in, and the other half, the surgery is done, the wires are inserted, but the stem cells are not put in. And it seems that they do as well or as poorly.
But that was a tragic story about the stem cell failure.
Yes, and that actually the persons who did better, the ones who believed that stem cells had been put into them, and the difference was not between whether they had been put in or not put in, but whether you believed. So in that sense, it is that the mind is supplementing the actual therapy. That is no argument at all to say don't go in for actual therapy, because after all, medical science is also these discoveries have prolonged our lifespan and so on. So one is not to decry that at all. It's certainly not an argument that when a surgeon says you must have surgery, I say, my guru says don't have it.
That happens.
That happens. That is a completely great misuse of the power of the guru. But what the lesson for the surgeon may be that you can also, as Naresh does, that if a person says, I also want to do X or Y, get the blessings of X or Y, and that helps. Why not? That it can actually have a good effect. As we know, for instance, doctors who it is said have a better bedside manner, patients respond much better to them than to doctors who will just come in and the assistants will write something and they will go away.
Well, once a Reiki master came to Naresh and said he wants to do Reiki on patients after heart surgery. So Naresh said, listen, if you're going to do it, I want to do a studied experiment. It can't be just a blind that you come and you do it and you leave. So he said, we'll do one set of patients where you give them Reiki, one set of patients where they don't get Reiki but they believe they're getting Reiki, and one set of patients who don't get anything at all. First he threw a big fit. He said, I'm not, you're questioning you don't believe. And they said, look, I'm a scientist. I'm not going to do this without doing it scientifically. So they did it. And what the end result was, that the patients who got Reiki did much better, recovered faster. The patients who thought they were getting Reiki had the same results as the ones who actually got Reiki.
Exactly, yes.
But the ones who got nothing had a slower recovery.
Yes, precisely. That documents the point.
Exactly.
That shows the power of the mind to help the body heal itself, which is what we should not discount.
Also, the argument is always given that how can so many thousands be wrong? Because we have mobs following all these gurus. And really you begin to wonder that why are people not more protective of themselves?
Yes, and that is partly herd mentality, partly the environment of the Sangat, that if you doubt, then it is your failing, not the guru's failing and so on. And it is that despair is universal, therefore people are looking in herds for some solace or some help. It's also the marketing techniques of these.
Just superb. But there's a line in Vaishnav Janata which says, Sakal Tirath Tan Man Re. All pilgrimages are within you.
Yes, indeed.
So isn't it just a false promise and bringing solace when it's really not real?
Well,
and you look at all these temples where people go put their jewelry down, cut their hair, they're making money with sending the hair to Japan to make wigs. They're billionaires, and poor people are giving their last thing ke mujhe apni mannat.
It is obviously what is called not so much false, but a white lie, a harmless lie, but which may benefit you or not benefit you. But the point is, in India we have to be conscious of this fact, not only of the power of the mind, Because in the West, the power of the mind is being studied exactly as Naresh is studying it, with 3 control groups. Mm-hmm. But in our case, we hear of an anecdote. Madhu told me this, who heard it from Naresh, who heard it from somebody, and we insist that that is true. And that is what is to be guarded against. And also not to reject conventional therapies on account of some rumored miracle or miraculous powers.
You've given a checklist at the end of the book on what to watch out for
yes.
with these gurus.
And you know, in Buddhism and in our sannyas tradition, it was that the follower must judge the guru, and the guru
for 12 years.
12 years. 12 years of examination and of thinking and of assessing. If I believe you have that power, I must think about it for 12 years.
Before accepting him.
Before accepting him. Before accepting in India means total surrender and total blocking out of rationality. That is what is wrong.
You wrote, as anyone who has entered the meditative stream knows, at first all sorts of thoughts and emotions arise in the mind and all sorts of experiences erupt. If one perseveres, and the saints certainly did for years and years, a total calm comes to pervade. A vast calm to the point of unchanging ocean is all that remains. Why is it that most teachers of meditation, particularly now, neglect to mention that meditation is an accumulative experience? That how you start your meditation, say, this week, and what your meditation is next year, if you're doing it every day, is an accumulation. Your experience now is an accumulation of all the meditations that you did. And people, of course, want instant nirvana, instant moksha, as that lady in your book launch asked the Dalai Lama, that what do I need to do to get moksha? And he gave an answer, but she wasn't satisfied. And she asked again, what do I need to do to get moksha? So after the thing, when we were walking out, I asked her, I said, what did you want him to tell you? Did you want him to tell you some rituals? Or some ke garibon ko daan de do? Because that gives you instant moksha. She said yes. So she was looking for an instant, whereas these states of moksha or nirvana are long journeys.
Of course, in the case of Sri Ramakrishna, 12 years of unimaginable austerities, of unimaginable withdrawal into oneself.
I mean, it's frightening when you read what he did to himself.
Yes, and Ramana Maharishi also, 3.5 years of, he's in a basement and people are, urchins are throwing stones at him.
Insects crawling all over.
So that is immersion. But I think there was a point to that question about what, I think she said, in addition to meditation, should we be doing other things also? And generally speaking, the Dalai Lama's attitude would be, yes, lead a good life.
With compassion.
Compassion. There's a wonderful sentence of his. And if you want to be truly selfish, help someone. Beautiful sentence. And I have added a footnote to that in my previous book, saying that if you want to be truly selfish, help someone who cannot do anything for you in return. Because if you do something for a prime minister and he does nothing for you, you say, "Yeah, देखो, मैंने इसको help किया, ये 3 साल हो गए, 4 साल हो गए, इसने मेरी तरफ देखा भी नहीं."
You can say that.
But in case it is for your child or for somebody else's child who is completely handicapped, he can't do anything for you. Or you do something anonymously, charity which is anonymous, and therefore you cannot, by definition, expect anyone else to do something in gratitude to you. And that's a much purer form, a much more therapeutic form.
Is there a touch of narcissism of being so involved in the self, with a capital S, of looking so aggressively for happiness? Most people are just trying to survive, put food on the table, get their kids to school. And in doing these simple things, there is happiness. There's hardly any time for the average person to go searching deeply, immerse themselves. And in your book, there are these issues of either you're a householder, and if you're a householder, you cannot be on this journey. So do you think it is possible for the ordinary average person to still take the advantage, use the advantages of meditation and go on a journey simultaneously when life in India is so tough?
Yes. Actually, both Sri Ramakrishna and Paramahamsa, for the monks, Sri Ramakrishna would say, yes, no amount of worldliness will do. That in a thread, when you are putting it into the needle, if there's a little sliver that is out, the thread will not go in. So he said even a little bit of worldliness will not go in. But for the general public, he said, yes, you continue to be a householder. In Sri Raman's case, he actually prohibits somebody who says, I want to take sannyas like you. So he said, no, your family responsibilities, do it there. This is then an excuse. You are invoking an excuse for not doing what you can do here and now. So do that. Don't worry about sannyas and so on. So they actually liberalized our tradition, both of them, by saying, yes, householders can also do something. But in the case of, if the person is too worldly, Ramakrishna would stress the opposite, as in the case when he's talking about
Devendranath Tagore.
Yes.
He didn't seem to like him at all.
Well, yes, he saw through.
Why is it happy to be detached, unaffected by the tragedies?
Just one point. You had used the word whether their immersion in the self was narcissism. Actually speaking, I don't think so, because their first point was of the erosion of their own egos to an extent to which we cannot imagine. I mean, there's an eyewitness account by a devotee of one of the followers around Sri Ramakrishna. At the time, his hair were long, and he was so humble. He will clean. He's the priest in the temple. He cleans the toilets
with his hair.
Yes, with his hair. Similarly, Sri Ramana describes the joy he felt in begging for food. It is to that extent to which they had erased their egos. So narcissism and their state is completely a different state.
I was going to ask you, why is it why is it better to be happy, detached, unaffected by the tragedies and pain around you? Isn't life more full and rich when you feel the pain of others?
Well, actually, they felt the pain of others. Both of them were very sensitive. There are all these accounts of, a horse being hit, and Ramakrishna is feeling the thing. Somebody else is doing something on the river, and he is feeling it. So sensitive had their bodies and minds become. And Sri Raman is reclining in the hall in which he used to be, and somebody outside shouts, snake, 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 and somebody with a lathi starts hitting the snake. And Sri Ramana is so upset, saying that if only somebody beat this fellow the same way as he's beating the snake, then he would know. So it is not that they did not feel the thing, but they were also removed from that pain in a sense. A mother's pain at the death of her son. The remarks of Sri Raman almost seem so detached as to be cruel, as to be heartless.
That is my question. That why do people, an average person, would rather block off somebody else's, somebody who's debilitated or physical condition or extreme poverty? There's a blocking off because there is a reaction that it'll affect you, it'll make you suffer. I think that suffering is good, isn't it? If you suffer with the other person in your mind, if you read the newspaper and you read all these terrible stories, and if you actually start crying when you read, isn't that good to be able to have your feeling function intact?
But they would not at all discourage that. They would say, yes, that's a mark of the compassion growing within you. So this is a very subtle point. about the difference between detachment and indifference. They are not indifference to the pain of others. In fact, that's the whole purpose of their teaching, is to get you away from that suffering which envelops you. But they feel that the cures which we people are latching onto are ones which will not give us a lasting relief from that daily suffering. So they are prescribing a cure which they think will be a foundational cure and which will relieve us of day-to-day sufferings, etc.
But
Or not relieve us, which will equip us better to deal with day-to-day sufferings, etc.
Arun, as a follow-up, there seems to be this panic about escaping from suffering. What if you just accept life is suffering and you just deal with it? Everyone suffers. Mm-hmm. There's no one who goes through life in complete bliss. Some small, some huge tragedies. But within that, if there is an acceptance of it, isn't it simply easier instead of searching to put band-aids on it and be happy?
That's one of their teachings. And that actually, that you see, they say there are 2-3 levels of suffering. One is a primary cause. Adit has brain injury. And the Buddha would certainly say that I can't do anything about the brain injury. For that you go to the neurosurgeon, if he can do anything. But you have built up a 7-story structure on it. क्यों हुआ, इस बच्चे को क्यों हुआ, हमको क्यों हुआ, or those evil people, they are prospering. मैं मर जाऊंगा तो कैसे इसका कौन ख्याल रखेगा? It is that 7-story structure which I will help you dismantle, because that is a sort of accumulative stories you have built up by the mind has built up. So let us start by dismantling those. Not that you deny suffering, not that you resign to it and say, oh, I can't do anything. No, you must do maximum effort. But also understand the nature and the nature of that suffering, how you can put that suffering to use. It's a wonderful sentence, I think Solzhenitsyn quotes in one of his books, a Russian proverb, that when difficulties come your way, put them to work.
Grist for the mill.
Yes. And in our instance, it would be put them to work for your internal healing or improvement of the mind and so on.
You've written that from this, the Maharishi, he advances the proposition that nothing we perceive or experience during our waking state is any different. It is not any more real than what we experience or perceive during a dream. To those, in another passage, to those who do not know and to those who do, the world is real. And to those who do not know, reality is bounded by the world. While to those who know, reality shines formless as the ground of the world. Such is the difference between them. And on the same subject, the world is not entirely what we experience with our senses is also evident. It is an illusion. It is not as if the world is not there at all, but that is not what it seems to our sentence. So we come back to really Maya. What you see isn't, what you don't see is.
Well, yes and no. You see, the first point is, of course, the world is not just what we see. I don't see atoms. I don't see the cancer cell, but it is there. So the first point is that our senses do not reveal all levels of reality. That is true. Sometimes, as in a visual illusion or in an auditory illusion, it can be that I see something which is not there at all. It's just an illusion. There can even be a delusion, that is like a hallucination. Yeah. There's a music going on outside which I hear, which is actually not going on. So there are many aspects of that statement which are true. But I think a good point made in the book, which I have not seen elsewhere, is that this statement, this insistence of Ramana Maharishi that the world is unreal. I have said that there are 2 points to this. That the word unreal does not seem to convey what he has in mind. And that is that what you are perceiving at the moment is inconsequential, not that it is unreal. After all, they were eating food. If they were unreal, why would they eat food? Why would they give discourses to people who are not there? Why would Sri Ravi go around a hill all the time? It is a very long journey. And when he has sciatica, he will do that if the hill is not there. So in what sense did he mean that everything is unreal? I came to the conclusion there's a passage in one of the devotees' diary and the letters he used to write. Ramana says that I say it is unreal because people believe this is all that is there in reality.
And it's transitory. So
it is like a teaching device. I said, ये इस चीज़ पर नहीं focus करो, इस पर करो. So it is in that sense that the word unreal seems to be justified. He's only using it to persuade persons who are so totally immersed in the world. You are focusing on the wrong thing. Focus on that.
Arun, our viewers will be very disappointed if I don't ask you any question about the political situation.